Welcome to the HDG Stories podcast, where we'll share our threads of memories, knowledge, experience, and history, knitting all generations into a beautiful tapestry. So please like and share, and be sure to subscribe. Now let's get started.
Hi, this is Ellie. This week's podcast is with the delightful Camay Murphy, daughter of the famous jazz singer and band leader, Camay Calloway. Her life has many zigs and zags, but always moving forward. This is an excerpt from her long, full interview. I hope to talk with her again soon. In the meantime, welcome, Camay. So we'll start with your birth.
Okay. I was born in Harlem Hospital in New York in January 15th, 1927. My mother and father were not married at the time that I was born. My father was about 19. My mother was about 15 or 16, about 16. They were in high school. They had this love affair. I was the result of the love affair. This was in Baltimore, Maryland. I think they weren't married because my mother's side of the family felt that Camay Calloway was a too flighty a person, wasn't going to make any money, wasn't going to be able to support a family. He was doing all these things, walking horses at Pimlico, selling newspapers, doing a lot of odd and end jobs, playing drums and singing at various clubs around Baltimore. And so her family didn't feel as though he was a very stable person. His family didn't feel that my mother's family was culturally or socioeconomically on the same level. They felt as though they were socially well above, not just a step above, but well above the Proctors. And so they did not want him to marry her.
So Cab's parents thought they were
socially above.
Socially above.
Right.
And what's your mother's family name?
Proctor. Proctor. Anyway, my mother was sent to New York to have me because they didn't, everything was kind of under wraps in those days. When you had these pregnancies, it was a disgrace. Now they don't seem to bother about it. So I went to New York, Harlem Hospital, and I was born there. And then my mother stayed with some relatives in New York for a while. And then she came back to Baltimore. My grandmother at that time was working at her sister-in-law's beauty parlor at 833 Druid Hill Avenue in Baltimore. My grandmother on my mother's side. She was Viola Proctor. And so the person who had the beauty parlor was my grandmother's sister-in-law. And her name was Bertha Poindexter. And it was Poindexter's beauty salon. She was sort of on the level with Madame Walker, and insofar as she made some of her own products, made some of her own beauty products that she used at the beauty parlor. Not quite, the multimillionaire that Madame Walker was, but for Baltimore standards, she was considered wealthy. Mm-hmm. She kind of took me in, and I lived there. I was in Baltimore shortly after birth until about 6 or 7 years old. I think as a little girl, had some very nice experiences at the Poindexter Beauty Salon. Was very because I think I was kind of cute as a little girl, and so
you got pampered.
Got pampered, and a lot of ladies came into the shop, brought candies and things, for me. So
now I know why you're so stylish. It started early.
Of course, doing hair, doing black people's hair at that time was very different. Number one, everybody, for some reason, these black women could not get long hair. Their hair would grow to a certain length and then no more. So everybody was trying to get longer, straighter hair. They used to do a sort of like what they call violent ray treatments and put all these rays and things in their hair. And she had, Bertha Poindexter had developed something that was supposed to make your hair grow, and that was very popular, and people were buying a lot of her products, which I think she was just making out of suet, and it wasn't. However, somewhere along the way, I found her formula, and I didn't do anything with it. I really should have followed through, but I didn't do anything with her product. However, I do have a chart that she had listed up in her shop with the different prices, like 25 cents for shampoo and that kind of thing. So anyway, there were some very good memories attached to that period of my life. And then my mother married. She married Ralph Fenderson, and she was living in an apartment. She moved up to New York and was living in an apartment, and so I left Baltimore and went to New York to live with her and my stepfather, and there was a baby boy involved, Ralph Fenderson. And he is now a retired physician and lives in Centerport, New York. Pardon me? Yes, he's a half brother, and he. I remember in New York, because we lived in apartments. We used the parks a lot as kids. I'm talking about from about
New York,
7.
Were you in Harlem or somewhere else?
No, I was a little bit. We never lived in Harlem. Yeah, I was a little bit above Harlem. It was called Sugar Hill. We lived in Sugar Hill. So Morningside Park, when we lived downtown a little bit lower, around 115th Street, 116th Street, we used to spend a lot of time in Morningside Park. Not so much Central Park, in a different area. But the local parks were very, very important to us as kids. And you got all the drama, we played Cowboys and Indians, and because New York still has these big boulders. It was built on the rock and whatnot. You had a lot of different terrain to play in, and that was part of our thing. We played a lot of ball in the streets, playing stickball, handball, gaining sort of what you would call, a lot of upper body exercise, a lot of learning coordination skills, a lot of jump roping, I could even jump double Dutch.
Yep.
A lot of songs and rhyming and getting into a storytelling, make believe, all of that. I think was very developmental. It was something that really developed you, and I was right in the thick of it. I was interested in playing these make-believe kinds of things, going to the movies, spending all day long in the movies. And
you did do that?
Yep. After you wash the bathroom floor and the kitchen floor in your apartment on Saturdays, then you could go to the movies and really spend the day. So you had these favorite stars, Betty Davis and all these people, and you would come home, you'd be speaking with an accent.
I love it.
I remember we used to hang clothes up on the roof. There were lines up on the roof, and the tenants who lived in the house, in that apartment house, could go up on the roof. And one day my mother was up on the roof hanging up clothes, and there was a praying mantis on the roof. And we had just never seen a praying mantis. It looked like something from outer space.
Yes.
And my mother was throwing clothespins at it.
And they don't hardly move.
No. Of course, she couldn't hit it. She such a bad throw. And she called me, "What is that?" And I said, "I don't know. Where did it come from? What, because we had seen plenty of roaches and things.
Yeah.
We knew that. That was like a huge experience. I called my girlfriend from a certain apartment. All these people gathered around this praying mantis.
Wow.
And we don't know whether somebody had something, had been out someplace and had something, left it up on the roof, whether it crawled into somebody's basket of hanging clothes. We don't know how it got there. And eventually it flew off the roof. But I remember that, and I mean, it was like some alien that trying to think of some of the other. We did a lot of skating and a little bit of ice skating when I got a little bit older, but primarily roller skating. Roller skating was very, very popular, and that was what you always asked for Christmas.
And that was with the key with the roller skating.
Yeah, that's right. And you graduated to the ball bearing roller skates.
Yep. Did you skate just outside, or did you go to the roller rink?
Oh, no, there's no roller rink. Okay. You just skated and tried to find a good hill.
Not too many cracks to fall over.
Too much cracks to fall over, and someplace, where everybody skated. Mm-hmm. There would be a group of people. And I even learned, I think, how to go backwards, to skate backwards. There just seemed to be, at that time, in an urban setting, so many things to learn, so many little experiences that you might have. It was, kids now seem to be, so inclined with their computer, little phones and whatever, and they're so sedentary. But there was always like running, and then we used to steal. You would steal. There were a lot of open markets and whatnot, and we would do like a bonfire in an area, and then you'd have to go steal sweet potatoes to put the sweet potatoes on the bonfire. And I think the people knew that we were stealing. It wasn't stealing like they didn't know what was going on. Yeah. They just let the kids have a sweet potato. Yeah. And so he said, "Well, we'll clear this up when we go to confession and forget it. I stole sweet potato." 5 Hail
Now, where
Marys
you
or
lived,
whatever.
were they primarily black, or was it mixed?
It was primarily black.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but there it may have been a few white families. A lot of families were from the West Indies.
Okay.
West Indian families, and a few that were. I lived in a thing with lived in an apartment where Ethel Waters lived at one time, and we used to see her occasionally.
Did you know her as the famous person she became, or was she just a neighbor at that time?
She was a performer at the time that she was living, but she did not have that big
that
fame.
Big name at the time. Yeah.
Right. When you lived in New York, there was no feeling of like solidness, like I am here in this apartment forever. It was always looking at the better school, looking at the newer apartment, could get the same thing with maybe a little bit more space if you moved to block. So people would just pick up and you're gone. It was a kind of a transient gypsy kind of thing. And that sort of was kind of good because you really kind of had a feeling that your parents were always looking for something better for you. And that to me was a good feeling.
Was there any specific attitudes about like blue collar versus people who worked in offices or anything like that? Or
I think occupationally it was fairly mixed.
Okay.
In New York there was an area around 135th Street where just above Harlem where all of the intellectual, artistic and whatnot people lived.
Okay.
And it was almost like a little, what would you call it?
Enclave.
Like a little enclave. Right. And of course, this was sort of at the end of the Harlem Renaissance. So there was still a little bit of that. There was, in New York. And then where I lived was more like post office workers, people who drove the public transportation workers. That was a little bit above, the domestics, and there weren't a lot of domestics that lived where I lived. Some of them worked for the city and that kind of thing. But I don't think that there was any kind of I don't know because I was a child,
Yeah.
But I don't recall, my mother is a teacher or my mother is my father's a doctor or that kind of thing.
Only a bricklayer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool.
So I just.
Since you grew up, you're even a little older than I am. So, like, do you remember, like, in the electronics and technology, like, do you remember, like, your first TV? I'm pretty sure you would have had radios. Do you remember, like, your first television? How old you were when you got your first TV?
I know it was because I remember the Joe Louis fights.
Okay.
And we listened to that on radio, and you could get that in stereo because everybody on that block had the radio on. So it was like a stereo thing. I really don't remember my first television. I don't. When television was like 40s,
well,
50s?
Ruth, it was earlier than I thought, and I'm thinking the earlier ones were those ones that were like about this big. Because Ruth Sale talks about watching the fights on it. She loved boxing. Whereas I remember my first TV, I think I was I want to say like maybe 5 or 6, which would have been probably right around 1950, somewhere in there. And I remember baseball games more than anything else.
Okay.
But I did say to Ruth Sale, I said, one of my first memories is Kate Smith singing When the Moon, and she
When
right away lit right up and went, oh,
When
yes.
the moon comes over the
Yep.
mountain. And the gong shows, I remember seeing the gong shows. They had a lot of talent, what they call, that you would try out. It's sort of like, you do your little act, whatever, and if you were good, you get applause, and they had an applause meter to see what you got.
Yep.
And if you were bad, you got the gong. I used to watch that, but I don't know at what age I was.
Did it have much of an impact on you, or?
I imagine that it did, because you could actually see things that you had actually been hearing. However, some of the radio shows that were like the Grand Central Station and The Shadow and all of those things, they really worked on your imagination, and it was kind of a good thing, because you would just listen, and then you would sort of invent your own thing or your own ending or what's going to happen. And, I remember listening to President Roosevelt when he gave his fireside chats and whatnot. Yeah, I remember that.
What about like telephones?
Telephones, I remember I remember telephones in Baltimore when I was at Poindexter, years and years ago. They had a coin-operated telephone because it was a business. And so whenever I wanted to call, and I only called probably one person, that was Joy Shipley, because she had a telephone. Her father was a big caterer in Baltimore, Shipley's Caterer. But we used to talk on the telephone, and we had these, because we really didn't have a lot to talk about, we made up these people, Rookie, Chookie, Teddy Bear, and Doggy. And we had these long conversations about these people, these imaginary people. Like, do you know that Rookie hit Doggy with a stick the other day? Were you there? Did you see that? And she'd say, no. She said, I don't think Rookie would do that. We did go through all these long
and of course
stories.
You were, what, grade school age?
Yeah,
then,
I was
right?
grade school. Yeah. I was little. and so we would talk about these people, Rookie and Chookie.
Go through operators then, didn't you?
Yes.
You had to go through,
yes.
You didn't actually direct dial.
Right. And the operators would get on and tell us, you've got to get off the phone. We have a legitimate call.
Yes, there's somebody trying to get through, right?
Yeah.
In your home, do you remember having party lines?
I don't remember party lines. No, I don't. As I said, there was a commercial phone in Poindexter's. When I went to New York, I'm not sure that at first we had a telephone.
Okay.
In New York, there would be somebody who would have a telephone. You'd give the person their telephone number. They would come and tell you to come down to the phone, that they had a phone call for you.
What about like your first fax machine or your first experiences with computers or microwaves?
I guess I was one of those simple-minded people that was just awed by the fax machine, by the sort of, where's this coming from? And like you do something here and then something comes up.
Yeah, it's like how
What is that? Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Exactly.
Do you remember your first microwave, or the first time you ever experience the
Experience the microwave. Yeah, I was very afraid. About the
like the
radiation and all these things could come into your body and blah blah blah. And then I sort of got used to it.
Well, and when they first came out, they had signs on them.
That's right.
If you had a pacemaker or anything, don't stand in front of
the
the
microwave.
you know,
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
It's a fast-moving age, and you have to be a curious person. My son gets so mad with me. You know, he said, "What? Don't you want to know what this can do?" I said, "No, I'm really not interested."
I'm juggling what I already
I said,
know
"I'm
the best
trying
I
to
can."
do, you know," and I said, "And this," I said, "all of this high-tech stuff seems to require a kind of a dedication that you've got to sit down and with it for several hours, do nothing else, but just sit there and
kind of master what
to kind of master what you're doing." And I said, and I'm just not willing to do that. And number one. Number two, I'm from New York. I'm very paranoid, very suspicious. So when people say, "I want to be a friend," you know, and somebody I don't know, I'm not it, you know, that kind of thing. So I think it's the age that I came up in.
In your years, in your experiences, you must have words of wisdom that you would like to pass on.
I think. Try to keep calm. I think calmness and keeping your emotions kind of in check, if possible, is a good way of living your life. You feel more in control, and when you get out of control, that's bad for you, bad for whoever's around you, and whatever. So I would say calmness is critical. Sort of examine yourself every once in a while, just like if you're feeling pain or something, you know, "Oh God, I got to get to the doctor," or something. But also, you know, just do a general examination. Where am I? Where am I going? What do I want to do? How do I feel about this? Am I really an honest person? And when it's necessary to say a no, can I say no? You know, there's no one, because people are so different, and there's so much available to everybody now. It's very hard to sort of say, give advice or say you should do this or you should do that. This should be your pattern. But it's a different time from when I came along, and I don't consider myself a role model. I mean, I did a whole bunch of stuff, both good and bad, and to live to be 90 is you know, as much a surprise to me as it is to everybody else. You know, I think that you have to try to get in a place where you are going to feel comfortable. You're going to have some friends. You're going to have a social life. You're going to have an intellectual life, and that's about the best you can do.
Yeah.
And that's about the best advice that I can give.
Yeah.
Thank you, Camay. Camay's full-length interview is available through our subscriber page. See the link at the top of the page at hdgstories.com. In the full-length interview, she shares more stories about life with her famous dad, how she managed to get into the Gifted and Talented program as a young student, being an au pair for Lena Horne, getting her degree in early childhood education at NYU,
her marriage to Booker T. Brooks, working at Burgundy Farm Country Day School, and working another 2 years at the Mayflower School in Nigeria, plus 25 years as principal at Ashlawn Elementary in Arlington, Virginia. Add a later marriage to John Murphy III, publisher, president, and chairman of the board of the Afro-American newspaper based in Baltimore. He was also an avid photographer. Camay and John saw Grace from the train while coming back to Baltimore from New York City. Not long after, they bought a small house and began to spend time here. Since John's death, Camay has become an active community member, sharing her wit, enthusiasm, and amazing energy through a variety of projects. Camay is just one more example of the diverse and colorful threads that create the wonderful community we call Grace. Visit our website at hdgstories.com for other podcasts, to join our mail list, and consider our paid membership. Till our next podcast, have a great week.
We hope you've enjoyed today's HDG Stories podcast. We encourage you to subscribe. We hope you will share with your friends. Till the next story, we invite you to visit us at hdgstories.com.